In this lesson, I'm dealing with the stressor that comes from an abnormal or exaggerated fight or flight response. This is seen a great deal in people that have high stress reactions in their body, or in people that seem to have unusually high levels of anxiety. There's a little known explanation for how that can occur, how people and why people have an exaggerated stress response. And it comes from something called retained primitive reflexes. Now, this is described in The Floral Hand of God, Secret Healing Codes of Flowers Revealed. That's a book I wrote in 2014. And it's described, let me find the page, and page 238 describes the collection of flowers that are in a product called End to Panic. End and then the number 2, panic. And it's truly extraordinary how this can help get rid of an exaggerated stress response, which we typically think of as the fight or flight reaction. In stress response, the classical way that it's described, we all hear this in stress theory, is, it's the old primitive saber-toothed tiger thing. The hunter's out and he's going to be attacked, and his adrenaline kicks up and fight or flight reaction kicks in. The blood vessels contract, blood pressure rises, we get better muscular activity, we can run, get the heck out of there. So that's the typical stress response. Nowadays, we don't have the saber-toothed tigers, but we've got people cutting in front of us in traffic, which produces an immediate sort of shocking response in the body. Our adrenaline rises and then it goes down. But what happens is it comes up quickly, rises, and then goes back down. It's like a nice little bell curve. It goes up and it comes back down, and then it stabilizes again. So when that occurs again and again and again, then we get chronic stress. But if it's just a singular event, it shouldn't have persistent long-term effects. But there is a class of people, it's a fairly large group, that have what are called retained primitive reflexes. And this is described in the book. It's written in the middle section, or in the last section, part 3, that describes the actions of different groups of flowers. And this one is in the group of flowers is in End to Panic. And retained primitive reflexes have not been discussed much in neurology, and they haven't been discussed in everyday clinical practice very much. And yet the implications are huge. When infants are born, there are a group of neurological reflexes, and one of the well-known ones is called the Murrow reflex, or the withdrawal reflex. And these reflexes, some people categorize them as 8, there could be more or less, but there are a number of different reflexes that are installed in the newborn nervous system, and they're supposed to stay there. They disappear at varying months, but by about 18 months, they should all be gone. These are reflexes that protect the neonatal from potential harm. So if the baby withdraws its hand from a hot stove, and various different forms of these protective reflexes are very important. But if they're retained into adulthood, you get this confusion of the primitive nervous system reacting inappropriately. So you have inappropriate stress response, and it is a deep core stressor, and it's associated with persistent anxiety in many cases. So the collection of these flowers can help to remove these exaggerated stress responses. So the test phrases, which I've referred to in other lessons, are the statements that the client or patient makes, and I use these at the beginning of the characterization of flowers. When I get new flowers and I'm guided to extract new flowers, that story of how that guidance occurs is the first part of the Floral Hand of God book. But it's not something you could intellectually find. There'd be no way to even think of these things, because if you actually stopped from an academic point of view and started, well, how would you discover stuff? And I'll tell you with this particular group of flowers, how would you intellectually put together a group of frequencies from flowers around the world and have it come together and all work together to produce an outcome of transformation? You couldn't. Humans can't figure that out. It has to be through some sort of wonderful help from up above. So that's something that I wrote about in the book, and I explained pretty extensively what my experience has been with that for the last 14 years. So on page 240 of the Floral Hand of God book, these statements that we use for patients, for clients, when they come in, I can assess them and I can find out if these unconscious beliefs are present or not, and if they could be very strongly related to core stresses or anxieties. So the first statement, which is sort of astonishing, is life is a series of panic reactions. When I check patients that have the need for these flowers, that tests as true in their unconscious mind. In other words, in the neuromuscular testing, the muscle stays strong, coherent. They say life is a series of panic reactions, and it stays true. It means their nervous system, that on the unconscious level they believe that. A series of panic reactions. So they're standing someplace at lunch holding a tray in the line or something, trying to check out and get food, and somebody's phone goes off, or somebody has a outburst next to them, and their nervous system just goes, it fires at full intensity. And that's why I said it's an inappropriate stress response, because there's nothing that's going to happen to the person. It's not endangering. But the person's nervous system is set to react as if it's, dire catastrophe, something that's truly frightful or frightening or potentially damaging. And that will wear you out. If that's there in the unconscious mind, that will wear you out. A second important test phrase for end to panic, the Floral Life combination flower essence called end to panic, is I can focus on what is important to me. So when I'm testing a client or a patient and the muscle does not stay strong, I can focus, it weakens. It means that statement is not true. In other words, it means the person cannot focus. And one of the great benefits of end to panic is the ability to increase focus and for people to clarify what's going on in their life and to not be as scattered. But that scattered is neurologically very related to the inappropriate stress response, the panic reaction. So those are two wonderful insights from that. Let's look at, I'm going to go to the next page, page 240. And there are actually 15 different test phrases dealing with the various aspects of the frequencies of the various flowers that are in the combination essence End to Panic. And each of these flowers has different core information coded in it, and that core information is transferred to us. And as I've said before many times, I'm using that phrase, it acts like liquid software for the mind. It changes. It's as if we overwrite or install new programming, and it changes the way we access stored information. So the Floral Hand of God book talks about information transfer, and especially in the first chapter of part 2. How can this occur? Because it doesn't logically make sense. But after watching it for 14 years, there's no question in my mind that it's occurring. The question is, how? And that's why I wrote the book. And the people that want to benefit really don't have to understand how. They just want to know that it will. But I encourage everybody to get the book. It was a lot of fun for me to write. So there's a wonderful phrase at the end of this. These have a series of great test phrases. Number 14 is, all that is rightfully mine finds me easily now. So that deals with manifestation. And, people often want to start right away with manifestation. And what they don't realize is that the process that must occur before that is alignment. And before that is healing and repair. So there is a model, the healing and repair model that has come out of this work in the last 14 years. Is very simple. And you can look at that, which I will show here and in other places, and just take a moment to read that. If you start at the top of the model and read and just follow down, you'll see as the arrows move, that is the progression of what happens to people in stages. Once you understand that model, you can see how we develop malcompensations or imbalanced parts of our personality as a result of emotional trauma. And we have to repair that first and then reestablish a sense of receiving. That's the second stage. And then we can do manifestation and empowerment. But you don't want to try and build a strong structure on a weak foundation. It can't work. Number 9 on this list. If I fail, I won't be loved. Is that associated with people that are kind of panicky? Because what's worse? If I fail, I won't be loved. It gets to be really agitating. If I fail, I won't be loved. This unconscious belief, it can lead to panicky type reactions. So all 15 of these are listed, and it's worth looking at that, and you'll see the depth with which into panic can act.